In most science fiction, major technologies of the setting are presented. Of course, these technologies vary on the setting's time period and whether the story is hard or soft sci-fi. Nevertheless, very rarely are the technologies that make life possible are presented to us. As an example, we might be shown a futuristic city, but we are never shown the inner workings of that city, how these citizens live out their daily lives, how they work, etc. And then somebody might ask, what technologies make their daily lives possible? This is the first official video in a planned ongoing mini-series titled Societies of 2100, which itself will be under the collective series Science and Forward Thinking with Robert Jackinson. I've been talking about it on my Discord server and have been mentioning it in my video descriptions. But now it's finally here, so I'd figure we should start right away. In this series, we'll be focusing on the smaller aspects of civilizations, from urban technology to the more speculative aspects, such as pop culture of the future. And I expect that episode is going to be a fun one. In this particular episode, we'll be discussing the technology of future civilizations and cities of that time. Now, how did I end up writing this script? Well, I've been writing a hard sci-fi novel for about a year, and that sparked the initial idea to write this script. The novel takes place in the year 2100, and the script discusses one aspect of life and technology of humanity in 2100. We'll be discussing cities of the future, technologies that may be common in those cities, as well as technology of the common person. The biggest and most important thing in all of this is how cities of the 22nd century are designed, both in terms of form and function. There are many concepts for how our future metropolises may look, and many of these depict buildings with organically inspired forms. Greenery is also integrated heavily into the city's aesthetics. However, while an increase in integrated greenery is to be expected as we become a more carbon neutral civilization, plus for purely aesthetic purposes, buildings will probably keep many of the recognizable architectural features, although a more geometric style of architecture may arise with skyscrapers. Although this aspect is somewhat debatable, as architecture in the future is extremely speculative. Moving strictly from buildings for a moment, the architecture of homes, on the other hand, is a bit harder to predict. Homes of the future may be similar to today's modern houses. homes that are somewhat monotone, have lots of windows, and have flat roofs. Or they could be similar to homes of today, but built with a more simplistic design. Alternatively, home architecture may become more ornate, as it has been in past decades. You never can predict these trends. Sometimes it's gradual and sometimes it's not. There's also a difference in how the architecture of cities of the future might look as a whole, depending on if existing cities are expanded or not, which will probably happen anyway. For instance, if we are expanding Sacramento, there would be a clear mix of old, current, and future infrastructure. Or, from the perspective of someone living in 2100, ancient, old, and current infrastructure. This would be the case for any city built since the late 1800s or early 1900s. But that assumes the older parts of the city are maintained. So, contrary to what many concepts of futuristic cities depict, a mix of old and new architecture will likely be quite common, which is all great, because honestly, who denies a mix of modern and classic architecture is pleasing? But how a city functions is just as important as how it looks. That leads us into our second topic. When many think of a futuristic city, probably one of the most common things they conjure up in their heads is flying cars. Well, when you think about it, flying cars are a really bad idea. Traffic nowadays is bad, so imagine that on 5 and in the sky. And they are incredibly inefficient as a means of transportation, both in terms of the amount of power they use and their practicality. Plus, there's a whole plethora of engineering challenges as well. Speaking of engineering challenges, fusion has lots of them. Even after many decades, we still haven't even achieved a net gain of one where we get the same amount of energy out of the process as we put into it. Preferably, though, we want the net gain to be greater than 1. While cheaper electricity is great, that is not the only benefit of fusion. Indeed, there are many indirect and lesser known impacts on society that fusion will bring because of this. But one other aspect of cities that might be even more obscure, but something that is just as impactful as fusion, and maybe even more so, is the Internet of Things. The idea is relatively straightforward. Connect every single solid structure, piece of furniture, and surface to the internet in a citywide data link, and this will have a dramatic effect on the lives of the common person. But it's obviously easier said than done. This will require an incredibly complex data infrastructure, and of course, we'll need to be able to handle all of that tremendous influx of data. But if it is perfected, the consequences it could have on our lives could be extremely far-reaching. It may have an impact just as drastic as the emergence of the smartphone. As one example, damaged cars in car accidents could send out a whole host of signals to alert search and rescue teams at the speed of light. That same connection the car has to the internet could be used to alert those search and rescue teams exactly what part of the car was damaged, when it was damaged, and what potential injury the driver and or passengers may have suffered. Taxis can be summoned almost instantaneously at the push of a button. Drones could be alerted instantly to an order that was placed, enabling extremely fast delivery of anything. One day shipping is over. Try 1 hour shipping, or even 1 minute shipping. If someone you know arrives at your house and nobody's home, no problem. Your door can alert your house you have a guest, and all the useful things in the house will turn on automatically. Their personal preferences regarding more specific things in the house, temperature, lighting, etc., would come into play as well. Those preferences could be indexed by computers or other devices in the home, and will likely see an increase in personal indexing as time goes on. That latter scenario might be one of the most drastic. When technology makes people's lives more convenient, they seize that opportunity to use that technology, and an increase in convenience, as we've seen in this day and age, has an almost unforeseen effect on the way we live our lives. Changing gears here, figuratively of course, self-driving cars, at least right now, are only practical on highways, which are relatively predictable in comparison with city roads. Although I do expect them to get better at handling unpredictable situations and adapting to each road, which is what city streets tend to be, unpredictable. But computers can, and most likely still will, make mistakes. That'll be where one of the consequences of the Internet of Things I mentioned earlier will come in. Yes, car accidents may become rarer, but when they do occur, there'll be new safety measures to ensure the aftermath is not as dangerous as it can be today. All of this is great, but how will people, the aspects of cities that will really matter, fit into all this change? The changes that come as major technologies evolve will undoubtedly affect the common person. Right now, we carry our devices with us. We carry our smartphones, we carry our laptops, our chargers, etc. But what if we could wear our highly prized electronic gadgets instead of carrying them? This might be around the corner. In the future, if we assume improvements in miniaturization and portability will continue, we might be doing exactly that. Wearing our devices, not carrying them. In my sci-fi novel I mentioned at the beginning of this episode, everyone has a bracelet that they wear on either their right or left arm. Now, this is where things get interesting. The bracelet has two lasers, one of which projects a holographic screen onto the palm of the hand, and it works just like how our touch screens do today. Some of you watching this might be wondering how someone can interact with the screens if it is just light. After all, light doesn't interact with matter. Well, let's take a holographic keyboard, something that exists today, as an example. They work by tracking a person's body movements via an infrared sensor. When you touch a key, the sensor can detect that and enacts the corresponding action that your input is linked to, i.e. typing that letter on your computer. This allows for interaction with a holographic surface, even though it's just made of light. This is similar to how modern day touchscreens work, so this technology isn't that far off. An extension of this, which isn't as developed, however, is fully 3D holographic objects. The trick is, we can't use light, as light won't appear three-dimensional, but we can use lasers. If you were to pulse a laser beam fast enough in the air, bursts in the femtosecond range, which is 1/4 of a second, that point of air will become ionized, creating a dot of plasma. Because of the burst's short duration, the plasma would be safe to touch. This was actually done by researchers at the Digital Nature Group in 2015. If you could string this process together by creating thousands of points of plasma, you could create, in theory, immensely complex 3D holographic objects. This could extend into communication applications, but we'll cover those in a future video. Another thing we might see in the future is smart clothing. Think of the tech in Back to the Future Part 2. Besides the variety of smart clothing technology we see in the film, including the self-drying jacket, which is one of my favorites, we might see micro solar panels integrated into clothing. These could provide heat to a person's body in cold environments, and we could see self-repairing clothes too. Other integrations of technology into clothing could become common as well. The future will be full of small but life-changing inventions. We've already seen this. The advent of the smartphone changed our lives practically overnight. The possibilities for technology are virtually endless. Keep in mind all of these topics will get their own videos eventually, but don't expect these videos to be out in a week or anything. These take time to make, so be patient. But on the flip side, that doesn't mean there'll be several months before the next episode. I do have plans. There will definitely be episodes following this one. In the next episode, we'll be discussing space warfare in the context of a fleet-on-fleet battle, and we'll also be discussing the plausibility or non-plausibility of space fighters. For an alert when that and future episodes come out, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an episode. I have big plans for the future, so stay tuned. If you liked this video, be sure to leave a comment, leave a like, and share it with others. Discussion is always welcome in the comments. I'll see you in the next video. This is Albert Jackinson, and have a great March. Oh, and a great 2020.